Alexandra Silber is a talented Broadway actress who is celebrating the publication, oh my God, of your first novel,
Yay.
After Anatevka.
Yes.
How are you doing?
I'm great.
Look,
Thank
here it is.
you
It's
so
real.
much.
You have a cover. Your name is on it.
I can't believe it.
You are a published author.
Yeah.
Has this been a dream of yours to be a published author? Is this something you ever thought about as a little girl? I mean, I know you thought about being a Broadway star, which you did. Was this also on your list?
You know, it never was as a little girl. I think more as I grew up, but definitely in the last 10 years, it's been on the bucket list, and I sort of can't believe I'm here.
You have like an online blog, don't
do.
you?
Yeah.
And so I knew you were a talented writer because I actually dug in and read some of those really great essays you've written.
Thank you.
But like to read this kind of blew me away. Like this is a lot. This is historical.
Yeah.
A lot of research went into this. Many people might know you were in the last revival of Fiddler on the Roof.
Yes.
And you played
Seitel.
Right. But previously in the West End, you played
Huddle.
You got married this time.
Second oldest to oldest, and you know I'm still gunning for gold to 2030. Just anybody else.
It's going to be so good.
Exactly.
It's gonna be
Yes.
so
Exactly.
good. And this is a novel. You basically created an entire sequel. Would you call? Is it a sequel? What is it?
Yeah, a continuation, I would say.
A continuation of the story.
What happens to Huddle and Perchik? Because as you know, people that know the show, and for those of you who don't, there's Huddle sings that beautiful "Far from the Home I Love" song on the platform, and then goes off to get on a train to Siberia to join her socialist fiance Perchik.
Yes.
And we never hear from her again. There are some little whispers in the original Shalom Aleichem stories, but I really felt compelled to complete her story for myself. And it's in one of the most incredibly rich and tumultuous times in history. So it was, you know, it was a very joyful act and a very personal act for me to sort of finish and complete what happens to her, and incredibly fascinating.
Right.
So for me, when I was playing Huddle in the West End, I had, you know, quite recently lost my father.
Right.
So the role took on a sort of special significance because I hadn't really done any of the work on that. And, you know, to say, the last line that Huddle says in Fiddler is, "Papa, God alone knows when we shall see each other again." And I think for me, it took on a special significance. You know, also, I was this 18, 19-year-old girl, just like Huddle, that had, in the, you know, wake of my father's passing, decided to just get on a plane and move to Scotland, where I went to college.
Go to acting school, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a parallel between an 18-year-old girl that gets on a plane to Scotland and an 18-year-old girl that gets on a train to Siberia. So sort of only now do I really see the significance of why I felt so compelled to finish her story.
And we know what happened to you, and now we know what happened to her.
Yes, exactly.
Now we know. And it's a great adventure. I mean, really is I mean, it's like characters you know and love, and there's some really beautiful flashbacks to the time of the story of Fiddler. So you actually get to sort of see some things, which is really cool as a musical theater fan, to moments you know from Fiddler, then you kind of go, oh, this is an interesting new perspective on this scene.
I was hoping so. You know, I think even though it's certainly not required that you know Fiddler on the Roof, I really tried to make sure that it was accessible to everyone, regardless of your knowledge of the musical. Fiddler fans will note that there are definitely scenes where I have tried to illuminate what happens between the scenes we see on stage.
Right.
So where we, of course, you know, one of the most famous wedding scenes in theater history is the wedding of Model and Seitel, which I was so honored to do on Broadway. But we don't really know a lot about what happens the morning of the wedding. And that is actually one of the, you know, that's the seeds of some of the most profound memories for any family. And lots of things like that.
And you make, I mean, Huddle is like she's a Wonder Woman. I mean, she's a great heroine. She goes through it.
She goes through it,
I mean, she really goes through it.
Well, it's very realistic. You know, I will say that I think people who expect it to have a similar tone to the musical are going to be surprised because it definitely has resonances from the original Shalom Aleichem stories, but it's definitely Shalom Aleichem meets like Dr. Zhivago. It's it's a sweeping historical love story, and it's also historical fiction. So, you know, emphasis on historical. I really wanted to show as realistically as possible what people went through when they were living in these prison camps at the turn of the century in Russia. You know, none of it was particularly pleasant. Huddle and Perchik are sustained by their hope and by their love.
A lot of love. It's a great romance. And I was just picturing, as I was reading it, I was picturing the whole thing on the big screen. It was a big like epic movie in my mind. A movie in my mind.
I hope so.
So life as an actress can be challenging because you kind of wait for other people to allow you to go on stage and do your thing.
Yeah.
So what's it been like to have this creative outlet and to sort of be in control of something? Yeah. Has it been really important for you?
I love this question. You always ask the best questions. Yeah, this is a really interesting thing, I think, in general, not just artists, I mean, maybe especially artists, but human beings in general sort of operate under this assumption that we have to wait for a permission slip to create something, to put something out there in the world. And the truth is, I guess as I've grown up, I've discovered that no one is going to offer you that permission slip.
Right.
That the magic of creativity is in the doing. This was totally different for me because the only person that was going to let me down daily was myself. It was just me and the blank page, no permission slip. And ultimately what was so wonderful was I was able to engage with my creativity on my terms on a daily basis. And at the end of the day, something that didn't exist before I put it down suddenly was in the world. That is a very different satisfaction from being an actor. And they're not to take away from one another. They absolutely complement one another.
Mm-hmm. And you are actually writing a second book, and it's a memoir about the loss of your father.
That's right,
yeah. What's that called? It has a great title.
White Hot Grief Parade.
Great title.
And yeah, it has a very different tone. Obviously, it's not historical fiction. It's sort of historical, but it's memoir.
Yeah.
And it has a very sort of blackly comic tone. That book is slated to come out. White Hot Grief Parade should come out Father's Day weekend of 2018.
I can't wait to read that. And so this is in stores. And what's it like to visit it in the store?
Well, the day that it came out, I actually went to Barnes & Noble, and I just pretended that I was just a punter. And saw it on the shelves under new fiction. And I have to say, there's no feeling in the world like it. It's absolutely mind-boggling, absolutely on par with a Broadway opening night.
It's a beautiful book. I loved every page of it. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
And everybody needs to read After Anatevka. You can get it at bookstores, you can get it ebook, anywhere, right?
Anywhere.
Anywhere. Just look it up and get it. It's awesome.
Thank
you so much for being here.
So happy to be here again.